Let's talk about your ability to learn things way faster than you thought it was possible. Any kind of skill, being a good musician, learning to cook, learning to speak a new language, or learning conversational hypnosis and being able to influence people's minds just by using a few words. All those things people want to acquire them really fast, and actually big results in any kind of area of life is made of very small chunks, and more specifically is an assembly of small components. The thing with those smaller components is that they usually come in a time frame. If you are seeing that as a game, the thing you are learning right now as a game from level 1 to level 10, it is pretty tough, if not impossible, to discover and learn all the trickery and the stuff of level 8 or 9 or 10 if you are not really competent at level 2 and 3, for example. One good analogy I have for that is the game of Texas Hold'em, the game of poker. When you see those guys playing poker on those tournaments into Las Vegas or into those private games like with James Bond, you can see that this game I played a bit when I was younger some years ago, and by no means was I an expert at it, but I learned enough to find some parallel between this game and anything else I have been learning over the years in terms of skills. The game of Texas Hold'em is played in 3 parts, or even in 4 parts if you include the betting game just before the first cards are being dealt. In Texas Hold'em, basically you have a first betting turn where everybody is betting based on the cards they have into their own hand. Then there is the flop, so the first 3 cards being dealt, and there is another betting turn, so people bet some money based on do they have a good hand or not with mixing with the cards on the flop. Then there is another card falling on the board and another betting turn, and then a final card and a final betting turn, so the turn and river. The thing is that at every moment some players might get out of the game, and the information you have to deal with mentally is more complex as you progress toward the last card, because much more information has been used, much more information has been introduced into the game, and some players may have been playing in more tricky ways. Basically, playing the flop is really not that difficult. Like when you read any kind of basic poker book, you can find the right strategy to play the flop correctly. However, being able to play the turn and the river is way more difficult, and when I was discussing with very advanced poker players, they even confirmed that the difference between a beginner poker player and a really advanced one is based on how well can they play the turn and the river. More specifically the river, first of all because it is a hand way less people are capable of playing correctly, and second of all because much more money is involved into winning that hand, into winning the hand if it comes up to the river, because more betting turns have been accumulating from the beginning of the game. So when you play the river really correctly by having the right information on your opponent, how have they been playing before, you have much more of an edge to make more money at this game. So what I find really interesting with this game of poker as an analogy with anything you're learning, and what the description I have just given right here, you can fit it into anything you're learning as a skill, because skills, a level of skills comes in chunks through time. The last steps of the learning curve cannot really be accessed. You have less opportunity to practice them if you're not already advanced on the first ones. With poker, for example, if you are extremely bad at playing the flop, you're not going to see many turns and rivers. You're going to see many turns and rivers when you are already experienced in playing the flop correctly, which means you will lose less money on the flop and pre-flop, and you can see more turns and river cards. If we compare that to conversational hypnosis, or being able to handle an NLP session with NLP language patterns or belief changes or any kind of NLP techniques, when you are a coach, basically. What I found out after teaching those skills to people for many years is that it comes down to 4 phases, I would say. The first one is being able to build rapport effectively, and if you're trash, if you're really bad at building rapport, very not likely you're going to get at the next phase, which is understanding solving the problem, asking the clever questions to your subject, to your client, so that you figure out what is the problem he or she has at hand, then leading into a new direction. So this is where all the hypnotic language, suggestions, change patterns, core principles, the triangle resource, the core transformation, all those techniques, they are going to come into play to try to make their mind get on a new direction by removing the limitation or shifting, changing, reframing, healing the limitation and getting them to a new outcome. Then for some people, you will obviously face resistance. Some people will not change that easily during a therapy session as a coach or as a therapist. Some people will just jump on other topics, other things they are worried about, other trauma they have been facing during their life, and it will just be not as easy to make them change. So the dream scenario of everybody in life is that you improve into all of those smaller components, all of those smaller skills at the same time. It is a dream scenario. In reality, what is going to happen is that you're not going to improve in all of them at the same time, because you will just see much less of those, for example, those last ones in the beginning, because you're not advanced yet on the first steps, which are the ones that allow you to see, to practice those ones, unless you practice with a friend in a non-threatening environment. Otherwise, if you are practicing right away with real clients, you won't really be able to practice those things as easily right away, which means they are more difficult to access. The level of skills at those last phases is more difficult to access. In real life, what's going to happen is that you are going to improve drastically into building rapport by practicing. As you are practicing building rapport with your client, you are going to improve slightly, still, but a bit less on understanding the problem, which is the second phase, and then less on the third one, and even less on the fourth one. Same thing with poker. In the beginning, this is how to play the flop, or even how to play pre-flop, when you just see your two cards and you want to guess the right betting for the two cards you have in hand. That is pretty easy to figure out. Then playing the flop is trickier but still accessible. Then playing the turn and river, really tough. Like you need to see a lot of them, and in order to see a lot of them, you need to have already been playing for a while, because you need to have become really good, maybe not excellent, but really good at the first initial steps of the curve. So all of that to say that it is completely normal if you are not really understanding yet the very advanced trickery. So if you are studying conversational hypnosis and sleight of mouth, for example, or how to use NLP techniques on yourself for your problems, it is normal that the very advanced things are things you don't understand yet, because you don't have the right foundation. You don't have the grounding foundation that is going to allow you to build way higher and way more firmly on top of that. A simple process I am suggesting to allow you to better figure out what is the next step for you, or where you are and how can you accelerate to the next step, the next phase of your learning process, is to divide this into 5 questions. The first one is, what's the big result I want to achieve right now? So with the thing you are studying, whether it is communication skills, healing skills, weight loss, nutrition, whatever that is, what is the big result, the biggest result far away in the future I am aiming for right now? Then you can ask, if you had to deconstruct that into 3 to 5 small chunks, what would they be? So exactly like we have seen with conversational hypnosis, it starts with building rapport, then figuring out clearly the problem, then leading into a new direction, then handling resistance. You want to make an analogy of that for the thing you are learning, the big result you want to achieve. It is absolutely sure that it is an assembly of different smaller things. What is the equivalent in the thing you are learning? Or even if you are learning conversational hypnosis and you feel like my model doesn't fit with your experience, fine, just create your own model. Anything that doesn't fit how you want to accomplish your goals, just create your own model for how you want to accomplish them, with the methods you want to use and with the outcomes you have. Then question number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on each of them? So you are going to do what we have seen. On the first one, you are probably going to be pretty decent or have a good average level. Then on the next ones, you may be less and less and less accurate. Or maybe it's not even going to be exactly like that. Maybe you are going to be really advanced on this one and pretty good also on this one, but really bad on this one. It is just aleatory. It may not be always coming like this. It is the most likely scenario, but it may go like you are going to progress more on step 3 than on step 2, and then it's going to reverse over time. It is just a measure of assessment, or assessing where you are, what's happening right now. Too many times people want to change their situation, but they don't have a clear enough understanding of what's happening right now. They don't have any sort of clear description of what's happening into their current level of skills, into their current level in life, and they lack that clarity, which means they can't figure out the next step because they're not clear or not honest about where they are right now. Then question number 3 or 4, which of them is the main one you need immediate improvement on to get closer to your goal? So if you come back to the big results you want to achieve, you look at your chart. You may do it graphically like I did, or you may just draw it or just think about it in your head. And we see, depending on where you have a low score, you can just elaborate what is the immediate one I need to work on. To come back to my example, is it really on the building rapport? Is it really on the handling resistance? Or if you're playing poker here, do you need to improve more on the flop? Do you need to improve more on the turn and the river? If you can find other subsequent skills like handling the emotional aspect of the tilt. When poker players play on tilt, it means they are just too emotional because they have been losing too many hands, and now they are getting really out of their clever mind. Those are emotional skills. You can also add it on the graph as being one other subsequent skill you need to work on. Just which of them, which of all of those smaller components do you really need to improve upon and to develop your level of skills with? And what's the smartest way of improving on that one right now? The smartest way could be to contact a coach. It could be to read one book. It could be to make more exercises. It could be to contact a friend who can practice with you. Just something that you can practice with, usually, if possible, in a non-threatening environment. Being on fire right away with real results is the most difficult way of training, because you have much more pressure to perform, much more pressure to deliver a result, and you may have less acceptance for losing, which creates even more stress and anxiety. So can you find, I know it's not possible in everything, but could you find a way to practice that is not threatening, or at least where you remove a bit of the pressure? So for example, people who play poker, if they play online for a while, they have seen many more hands than if they only play in a casino, where just the time the croupier takes to shuffle the cards is making them lose time on the number of hands they can play. And if they do multi-tabling, if they play with multiple tables on their screen because it is online poker, then they are gathering experience way faster. In order to play with at the right tables, the ones you improve your skills into, you need to play at tables that are costing more, because if you just play on free tables, people just play nonsense and without any rules and completely stupid ways. However, if you play right away into tables at like the blinds or $1, $2, or maybe 2, 4, you start having players who kind of know what they do, and you start improving your skills. It is still risking money, but it is risking less than if you were right away going to the casino, playing $2,000 buy-in into a tournament. You're just decreasing the level of stress. So for your thing, the thing you want to improve upon, what is the main step, the main area of improvement you have, and what is the smartest way of improving on that thing right now? Thank you for listening.